Hello, welcome to this video on Ansible Network Modules. In today's video I'm going to be looking at some basic Ansible Network Modules to perform some configuration tasks and some backup tasks on CSR100V routers and a couple Nexus 9kV routers as well. For the simulation of the devices, I'm going to be using EveNG. That's this platform here. If you've not used EveNG before, I would highly recommend you check it out, and I will be doing some video tutorials on this in the very near future. It's a fantastic way to simulate lab environments, so much better in my opinion than GNS3. But we'll be digging into that a bit later. But for now, just to show you that I do have 3 CSR routers running here and a couple of Nexus 9kVs as well. And we're going to be covering the Ansible Network Modules. So to find out what they are, we need to Google Ansible Network Modules. Do that here, Ansible Network Modules. The first one that comes up will be docs.ansible.com, and this is where you can get all the documentation for the network modules. Now, if you're here, I presume that you are a network engineer and you're looking to find out more information about this. If you've not come across the network modules or even Ansible, just a quick run through. Ansible is an open source IT automation platform, heavily used in the Linux server environment, and more recently in the last few years it's been gaining massive popularity in the network community. And as you can see here by the amount of network modules that have been created for it, you can see it is a heavily used platform. Now we will be using today the iOS command module and a couple of the NXOS modules as well. And so if you want to do anything with Ansible, configuring your network devices, then just jump into the Ansible Network Modules documentation, find something that might look like what you want to do, and then you can, it saves you a huge amount of effort in coding what you're trying to do. So for this example, we're going to use the iOS command module that is going to run some simple commands, and we're also going to be using the iOS config module as well to push some simple config out to those CSR routers. So let's put this out the way, and I'm just going to bring up the devices just to show you that we are dealing with real devices here, and I'm not just making this up. So we've got a CSR1, that's this one here, CSR2, and CSR3. So those are the 3 devices I showed you on running on EveNG. They're running on an ESXi platform in my spare room, funnily enough. So that's the devices. We'll be coming back to that very shortly, but what we're going to do is run this playbook. So if this is new to you, this is a playbook, and this is how you configure Ansible to do the configuration tasks that you want it to do. First of all, you have to define the hosts that you want to automate. So in my hosts file, I've got a group called CSR routers, and in there I've got CSR1, 2 and 3 and the IP address of those devices, and a bit further down these are my Nexus devices that I'm going to connect to shortly. Back into the playbook, so configure.yml. If this editor is new to you as well, this is Visual Studio Code, which is my new current favorite editor. This is running on my Ubuntu 18.04, and this is also my Ansible control machine. So let's go through the first playbook. This is going to push some very simple configuration onto all 3 routers, and we'll be using for this the iOS _config module. So the iOS config module, and all that's going to do is take the source this network programmability configs test.txt file. So let's just have a look at that. So that file is test.txt, and in there, very simply, I've got username Steve, password test12345. So we're going to push a new username onto this router. Very simple, but this is just to show you the concept and how this works. This could easily be a full router config based off templates, which again we'll go into in much later date. But let's take this step by step. So it's going to target the hosts. So this is the hosts in here. This is what it's going to target, and it's going to target all the devices in the group CSR routers. And we're going to push the configuration file. This is just a name, so this is a description of when the playbook runs. We're using the iOS config module, so that's going to do all the connection and worry about getting to the device. And we're just going to push that very simple config onto all three routers. So to run that playbook, we do Ansible-Playbook configure.yml. So this is now going to connect to all three routers and push that one line of configuration onto each one. And when it's completed, we'll get a change status. So we now know that that has completed, and we've got, hopefully, 3 routers configured with the username of Steve as well. So if I say show run include username, we've now got 2 usernames on there, Roger and Steve. CSR2 show run include username Steve and Steve. So we've got 3 usernames on the devices. Now that's a very simple process. Now what we're going to do now is remove the usernames off those devices. So I'm going to use this code here. Oops, that didn't drop on neatly. So for this one, we're going to use a different Ansible network module, and we're going to use iOS user. And what this one's going to do is just say for the username Steve, it's going to be state absent, which means remove it. Now I'm using the iOS user module 1 just to show you a different module in use. And secondly, the main reason is on the CSR routers, when you remove a username, it actually prompts you to confirm that you want to do that. And Ansible will stick at that point if you just push the config no username. So we're going to use a different module just to show how this works. So all this is going to do is push the file. So we're going to reconfigure the name Steve, and then it's going to remove it and take it off. So we already know the username Steve is on there. So let's just run the playbook once more. So it is going to run through it again, and then at the end it's going to rip it off. Okay. So this is now removing the username of Steve, and that tells me it's completed. So now if I go back into these devices and show username, you can see Steve has been taken off. 1, 2, and 3. Now I'm going to add one more little bit in here just to show you how that did work. And I'm going to use a feature called pause. Now, so if you've got a lot of playbooks and big playbooks and you want to just check things along the way before it times out or fails, you can just put pause in here. Now if you just leave pause on its own, it'll wait for a prompt. If you want, you can put a timeout on it. So now we don't have the username Steve on those 3 devices. So we're going to run the playbook again. It's going to configure the username Steve, put it back on, and then it's going to wait with that pause command. And there we go. And there's the pause. So now the playbook's waiting for me to come on and hit enter to say carry on. Now you can use this for many things. You can wait for a BGP neighbor to come up. You can wait for a validation, but we're just going to use it just to show you this. So I'm going to show run include username, and Steve has gone back on again on 3, on 2, and on 1, and then hit enter. Playbook will continue, and it's going to remove it off once more. We'll do show run username, and you can see it's gone. So that's the iOS user module and also the iOS config module. So I'm just going to remove that pause. That's going to get in the way. So, and I will show you another Ansible Network module, which only discovered this a few days ago actually, which is the iOS ping module, which will ping, and that's gone a bit too far. Now, this is YAML, and YAML is very picky about indentation, so it has to be exactly right. This will ping a IP address from the device, which is very handy. So what we're going to do now, let's just show you actually. Bring over the documentation again, and so we're going to use the iOS ping, test reachability using ping from a Cisco network device. Now the Ansible documentation is very good, so this will tell you new in version 2.4, test reachability using ping from switch to remote destination, and these are all the options that you've got with it, and here are some example configurations. So you can just use it from the default VRF. If you've got different VRFs and you want to test from within them, you just verify VRF and the name of the VRF in there. You can also define a source interface as well. So that's the configuration options. And I've just got it to ping my default router on the home lab here. So let's go back in, we'll run the whole playbook again. What it's going to do is configure Steve and then rip it off once more, and then it's going to ping from each device the IP address of the router. And this should come back green if we've got success with this iOS ping module. So Steve's gone on, Steve's come off again, and I can get reachability to this IP address. And then just to prove this out, let's just change the IP address. So this is now 1.2, so this will fail because that IP address is not live on the network. And we're just going to config and unconfig those usernames again. And this time we should get 3 failures on the ping. Now it does say they're 1.1. That is just a name. That's the description of the task, which I didn't change on the configuration. Let's just show you there. So that's just the description. That's the name of the task. So I should have just put a .2, but that's not going to affect the operation. This is the actual address that it's going to ping, and we'll go back and we can see we've now failed on those 3, which is a nice little test. So if you're pushing out some routing changes, once you've pushed the change out, you could put a ping in, you could put a pause in, just to test a few things before you progressed on with the other changes. So there's 3 little iOS modules. We're going to go and show you a couple more. So something that I use Ansible for, I would probably say the most use case for it is to do backups. So if I'm staging equipment anywhere working, I just take some backups of the devices. For those of you that are new to the channel, forgot to introduce myself. My name is Roger Perkin. I'm CCIE 50038. I work for a Cisco Gold partner here in the UK, and I'm getting heavily into network automation and programmability. So I'm using Ansible to help me with the day job, basically to try and save me time on tasks. So this one here is my favorite playbook. This is a backup playbook. The code here just creates a directory for me, and the directory is named with today's date. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that now, but just understand that this is going to just create me a folder to put these backups in. And then we're going to target the routers in the CSR Routers group. And then we're going to target the Nexus devices. So there's two Nexus 9KVs. Now for this one, we are using the iOS command module. And the command I'm going to push to those three CSR routers is show run. It then registers the output from that as a variable called config. And then it saves that into this folder, but it also saves it with the device name, and I've got all this formatting on here, which will save the router name and today's date in the correct folder. Now the NXOS does the same thing, but we're using a different Ansible Network module, and we're using the NXOS config module, but with the backup yes option. So this is actually designed for doing Nexus configuration. So if you wanted to configure the Nexus devices, you would use this module, and then at the end of the playbook run you would put backup yes, but I'm just using it just to do the backup. So we got NXOS config module, backup yes, and then it's got an option to provide the file name of the backup file. So this basically says the name of my device and the date, and in the right folder, which we'll see in a moment, and this is the path where to save those backups. So let's run that one and see what that looks like. Let's clear this screen. Ansible Playbook backup.yml. Now that playbook has been run many times today, so the folder has already been created. The folder is called 2019-10-10, so that's today's date. It's running show run on the three CSR routers, and then it's put the output of that into the backups folder. Now orange means it's changed, so the configuration has changed on those devices, and it's also changed on the Nexus devices. So let's run it once more. Now I'm doing this live. What should happen is everything should stay green, because no changes have been made to the config since the last time I made a configuration on the devices. Now that is a feature within Ansible called Idempotency, and it means that if you try to push a change that doesn't need to be pushed, or do something that doesn't need to be done or is already in that state, Ansible won't do it. So we've got Nexus backed up and we've got CSRs backed up. And to go through here, I will just show you where they've put those backup files. So I've got a folder here, and the folder is called backups. This is today's date, 2019-10-10, and I've got 5 backup files. So it's the device name, the date, and then -config. So there's the CSR's backup file. Here is the other one, and then the Nexus backups are here. So this is my Nexus 9K1, and this is Nexus 9K2. So there you have it. So that's a brief run through of the Ansible network modules that I've used, or I use most. We've done some configuration and some backups. If you want to learn more about this, I do have an Ansible network automation course. The description for that will be below. There's a link to that. You can find out more about that. And as I said, my name is Roger Perkin. And if you really enjoyed this, then please hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Then when I make new videos, you will get notified of them. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.